Hi everyone! You probably heard the basic headline going around that Sonic Origins Plus was leaked from a Korean ratings board, but the details about this game are actually super interesting and only beginning to surface. It seems like exactly what I wanted from Origins in the first place, such as more games, new playable characters, and new features. So I thought I'd throw my 2 cents in and add something a little different to the discourse I'm seeing out there. Now, before we continue, I know a lot of people are going to be skeptical of this leak, as people were even skeptical about Kishimoto's Twitter account that he's been using since 2015. But this leak is from a foreign government's ratings board, so they're definitely not getting any clout points from this. In fact, they'll probably get in a little trouble with fine. So this is definitely real, hence everyone reporting on it. I even downloaded, converted, translated, and double-checked myself, and it's definitely real. So before we get into it all, do the thing, like, because I'm so likable, right? Sub and double check, because sometimes YouTube just unsubs, and set the bell to all, because I don't upload that often, but it's always based in epic. So with that out of the way, let's get into it. Now, before we go into the new features that everyone is talking about and wanting, as well as what actually seems likely, I want to talk about the game itself with its release date and pricing, as I think this is going to be make it or break it for this new version. When the story was broken by Gematsu, they posted the actual Korean rating form as well, and the initial thing I find interesting about it is the registration ID on the right, meaning with us having a way to track it now, we're going to eventually get the release date this way as well, once that's submitted. We also know, just like Colors Ultimate and Origins original release, that some obscure French gaming store or something will also leak that out as well. It's somewhat safe to assume this will drop around Sonic's birthday in June, but nothing's confirmed on that for now. The only dates we currently have is the date of application and date of the decision, and that was mid-January, so a very recent submission for the game's rating. Meaning it will be soon that we're gonna see this, but I wouldn't expect it in like the next month or so. Although that could change since it's been leaked. Now, before we get into new features, I actually think the price is probably the most important for this game's success. With the base game of Origins currently $40 and Digital Deluxe being $45, it is possible that this will also release at $45 and the base price of Origins will drop from $45 to $30 or $35. And when Sonic Mania was released in 2017, it was $30, but when Mania Plus also released at $30, the price of the base game dropped to $20 for one of the best Sonic games ever. However, this was also in a time before Digital Deluxes and Mania Plus didn't have the depths of DLC content that Origins Plus is trying to have. Even the base game having coins in a store like that is much more than Mania. The real question is, was a year enough time for Sonic fans to buy Origins again for $45? Maybe 40, but point still stands. Now, the reason this is so make it or break it is there's a very real possibility we're looking at a $60 game for Origins Plus, and I wouldn't be happy about this at all. I can totally see how they would try to argue from a corporate standpoint that it's a $15 increase from the Digital Deluxe and try to justify it with the amount of games being added, which again, I don't agree with, but I do want to present this very real possibility, so you don't go into a coma from shock if it happens. While Sonic Mania Plus replaced Sonic Mania's price, Sonic Mania didn't have a Digital Deluxe like this game does, so that just complicates the whole situation. Now, let's get into the fun bits, which are all the new additions. So, a survey was put out by Sega a few months ago if we would be interested in them adding more playable characters as well as games to Sonic Origins. And well, the results of that are manifesting themselves in reality very soon. The first thing I want to cover is playable characters. Everywhere I'm seeing, no matter who's giving the take, the global Hivemind consensus has been in agreement on one thing in particular about this game. It will have more playable characters. I'm willing to even put my foot down on that one. However, there's specifically one I've seen Sonic fans willing to sacrifice their firstborn for, and that's playable Amy. I personally would love to see her have some slightly unique gameplay features, kind of like Mighty and Ray did, to make her stick apart and not be a sprite swap Sonic, like one being having her hammer be used for attacks, but also using it for a traversal, kinda like how you have to stop to spam spin dash, but if she spun her hammer and built up a swirling boost. Ooh, that'd be really cool. Moving on to the next characters being added, we have to remember one thing. While there's so many inclusions we could dream of here, realistically, this game isn't going to do too much original asset creation. And having seen how derivative even basic things like the sound effects being from Mania are, I'm expecting us to see Mighty and Ray get added, with Ray being the more interesting of the two, having totally different flying mechanics than Tails that changes how you play these levels a lot. I'm also hearing talks online about a playable Metal Sonic, and with how simple his floating sprite animations are, and the fact that he is literally a reskinned Sonic, as well as being in the classic era games, this all makes me think this one is entirely possible. Not saying it's certain, but very possible. One thing I don't expect is anything like Shadow or Silver. I even saw a couple people saying Big the Cat, and I'm sorry, that's just, I don't see that happening at all. The only way I could see us getting a bunch of these characters is if there's sprite skins you can exchange for coins in the game's shop. Because if it's just as easy as reskinning the characters, then sure, throw tons of people in there, just go for it. Now, let's get into the meat of what I find the most actually interesting. And it's not just adding characters to the same games, but adding new games entirely. Now, which titles will come is a point of contention in the community, but let's try to look at the ones being posted from a realistic standpoint. So with how much everyone was talking about it, Sonic Origins Plus was actually trending on Twitter. And there's a lot I could go into, but basically every one of these lists I'm seeing is boiled down to all the playable character stuff I already said, as well as adding literally every Sonic game before Adventure. And no, for the hyper literal people, I obviously don't mean Waku Waku Sonic Patrol Car or anything like that. However, going through it, I do think some of these are realistic and even likely. And that's what I'm going to start with. Here's what's most likely. First, I'd say 3D Blast, but which version they decide to use is going to be like a whole ordeal in itself. Another one being Sonic Spinball, just because it's a fun little easy inclusion from that era. One I'm seeing a lot of people talking about is Sonic R, but I don't know. While I think that would be really cool, the process to do that game would be way too difficult to warrant its addition in just this small update, maybe in like the next collection game. The one I'm seeing the most is Knuckles Chaotix, and I have to appreciate even these same people are at least acknowledging this is one of the most fundamentally flawed Sonic games. The amount of retooling here would be insane, however, still possible. On the topic of Game Gear games, this is possible, as I feel like those wouldn't take extreme effort since they're all small and simple, but you also have to think from another perspective about what the average commercial user would enjoy. Sega wants to have games and experiences that are cherry-picked and refined to try and show the best of what classic Sonic is. So for titles that are mediocre to just okay to be added would in their eyes do more bad than good for them. However, I do think ones released on console are much more likely. And on that, another one brought up is Sega Sonic the Hedgehog. And while that'd actually be really cool, is it's such a weird, unique little game, with it being focused on its multiplayer experience and Sonic Origins just tacking on a half-baked local-only multiplayer, I again doubt it. Especially since it wasn't even a worldwide console release. Again, those are the ones that are the most likely. Now, let's talk about features. There's one feature everyone's going on about, and I do think it's very possible, but it also falls under a wider problem with fandom culture. So a lot of people are out there saying,
we expect an encore mode.
And while this is possible, and I'd even go out of my way say, it's a terrible value if they don't add more games or give an encore mode to the existing games. But as Sonic fans, new ideas scare us. Seriously, we only see things from the lens of,
this must be something we've previously seen before.
And that's because it's way easier to envision the familiarity than something entirely unknown. Encore mode in Mania was different, but the levels didn't feel different enough. I think just like how the challenge mode utilizes the original levels, but they're manually altered, I'd like to see the base game we already have get an entirely alternate universe story that goes across all 4 games. And it's the same levels, but with major layout changes and simple color swaps. Just like Mania had, but a little bit more on the layout swaps. An entirely remixed B-side to all the games currently there, for me would warrant even not adding any more, as doing that would be a ton of effort in itself. And I think adding more playable characters is everything but confirmed. Like, they literally put it out on their own survey. And I'm struggling to find anyone disagreeing with that take either. One thing I really want to see is animations. With there being potentially new games, as well as almost certainly new characters, I think both warrant full new animations. Am I right? I also think those were some of the best stuff to come out of Origins, which is a little sad when you think about it. One of the best things to come out of this game was something I could watch on YouTube. Like, my dream Sonic game is a full, all original levels, Mania-styled game, but with Origins-styled fully animated cutscenes between each zone. Ooh, that would be such an amazing experience. Now, one last thing I want to touch on with Origins Plus is the Sonic 3 and Knuckles music. Personally, from what Sega's demonstrated to us, I don't think this has been resolved at all. If it is, I'd be beyond happy that some of my favorite classic songs are back. But with how tough the apparent fighting has been, we're probably not going to get these for a long time. Unironically, the only chance we really have is Brad Buxer gets yeeted from this mortal world and his estate sells the rights to Sega, along with the Jackson estate if he truly does have any credits on it. Since he's uncredited, I don't even know if he owns the rights. I'm pretty sure it's just Brad. And this is as true as it is grim. I really do hope to hear some new music for whatever additions they make, as the only new additions for Sonic 3 and Knuckles were viewed as not that terrible at best. That said, I wouldn't make any bets or hold my breath about it, because Sega going above and beyond for a game that's already released? What? And I know all the comments are going to say Sonic Frontiers, but hey, we have to see those updates first before we hype them up too much. Now, throughout this video, we've outlined basically every way I can see them approaching this that would leave Sonic fans feeling like it adds good value. And we're having a Doctor Strange moment where we can see all the ways this can go right, as well as all the ways it can go bad. Now, the ball is in Sega's court. My only duty is to cover the Sonic news and make sure you're subscribed and double check, as YouTube will randomly unsub. Drop a like if you like. Join my Discord, because I'm going to start doing more epic gamer stuff in there. That's right, playing epic gamer games with gamers. My period of social reclusion is over, so I might as well. Lots of love and peace. Peace!